Now what we're doing is kind of looking at the future and where are we going to go, and like you said, working back from it. Since I was 6-7 years old, I'd been going to Centre Parks with my dad around the LabLogic company, so I knew the other,
and they knew you.
They knew me.
LabLogic's grown through all of that. £30 million business now, global. If you're a business owner, let me ask you a question. What's your business going to look like when it's finished? And you might be thinking, well, that's a strange question. But really what I'm trying to do is prompt you to think about where it's going. What does the future look like? And the reason I ask you that question is because today's podcast guest on Business Unlimited is a young guy. He's 36 years old, but he's lived a lot of life in business and more generally in those 36 years. And he's learned a lot about himself already. He's the operations director for LabLogic, which is a £30 million radio pharmaceuticals business based on the Sheffield Business Park, locally to us. And what he's realized is that his thinking ahead has had to stretch from only a few months or a year at most to 3, 5, 10 years, and to align the business and the culture of the business to a longer term vision, so that when you look back from the end, everybody knows where they're going and why they're going in that direction. And from that, there's been tremendous change and growth starting to emerge. Adam Brown, Ops Director for LabLogic, based on the Sheffield Business Park. Welcome to Business Unlimited. Great to have you in the studio. Really looking forward to this conversation. Got to know you a little bit through a coaching journey. But really, this is an opportunity to get under the skin a little bit, find out about you, go back in time a little bit. You're really moving quickly through the business and with the business, but clearly there's a backstory. So I'd like to find out a little bit about you and your background and what led you into LabLogic, what LabLogic even is, and then we'll take it from there if that's okay.
Absolutely, Tim. Thank you for inviting me in, and yeah, see where it goes.
Great. So just tell us first of all what LabLogic is, if they haven't heard of the business.
So we're actually a group of companies. We specialize in the measurement and detection of radioactivity. That's across various application areas. So from anything from nuclear, environmental, to medical, pharmaceutical development. And the big area at the minute is nuclear medicine, and specifically the kind of introduction of like therapies as well. So it's about diagnosing and treating some pretty nasty diseases. So we provide hardware, so specialized quality control equipment, software to control that equipment, collect data, and something called LIMS software, which is kind of managing data throughout a process. So like in business, you have CRMs or ERPs. It's kind of one of those for the production of a pharmaceutical. And we provide a lot of services that go with that. So that's kind of, a little bit in a nutshell of what we do. We have offices in Sheffield, as you said, various places in the UK, France, Germany, the US, which is obviously a big market for us.
And where is your biggest market? What does the market look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, the US is obviously huge. Europe, again, is really growing. But then obviously there's emerging markets. When there's new facilities being built, LabLogic specializes in kind of a turnkey solution. So not just our own equipment, our own software, but from other manufacturers. And we go and do the lab design, the setup. And we work with companies like GE, IBA, who provide the bigger equipment, the cyclotrons, that type of stuff. So emerging markets, South America, Africa, Asia. We're doing a lot around the world now.
And that must feel very fulfilling in the sense of it's purpose-driven. It's helping to alleviate disease. It must feel that it's got mission attached to it.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes that's a bit of a challenge with our staff that don't go on site as often, to, people that do, and they understand the purpose of it. And I think that's a bit of piece that we are trying to work on. But absolutely want people to go on site, because you do feel like, and especially when there's personal stories, right? When people, we've had it recently where people getting breast cancer, we sell or manufacture a product to basically remove cancer from people with breast cancer. So when there's somebody who is personally connected to, you realise where you could.
Puts the human on it.
Absolutely.
Very, very good. You're in LabLogic now. Obviously, was that a formal interview process? How did that go to get in? Was it even made tougher because you were the son of the managing director?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people do say, like the other directors and stuff, like, I get a harder time, right? The interview process was interesting. I think before that, LabLogic, we do quite a nice thing every year and go to Centre Park. So I knew the LabLogic team because I'd grown up with them. Since I was 6, 7 years old, I'd been going to Centre Parks with my dad around the LabLogic company. So I knew the other,
and they knew you.
They knew me. So, and then every time we'd go to Centre Parks, I'd talk to them about what I'm doing in my career. And behind the scenes, they're saying to Richard, like, come on, we need to get him in. And Richard's like, no, I'm hard enough on people. I'm going to be even harder on my son. This is what I understand. So then when I went for the interview, I did have an interview process, but it was weird because I'm sat across from somebody that's seen me grow up. But yeah, it was interesting. And when I started, it was so different. Like working at Sheffield Wednesday, working at the child weight management, working at the race course, I knew the product, right? I understood the target market. When I come to LabLogic,
that's a big education journey.
I had no idea. And over that time, it's simply been just the willingness, like you say, to try to learn. And you know, when now young people join the company, it is about, do they have that drive and passion, and are they willing to put themselves out there and find their career? And you know, Richard himself started as a young developer at LabLogic. You know, he wasn't the founder, but he started as a young developer, and he did exactly the same in terms of bouncing around different areas and became more rounded in that journey. And I think that's what we believe in as an organization, is giving people that opportunity.
And also because you've been in that coaching environment, that coaching background, the understanding of personal development and self-awareness and the lifelong learning journey, you're already sort of inculcated into that mindset that you want to see others come into in LabLogic. So part of that is coming out of our comfort zones, working out where our strengths are, our weaknesses, etc. But where it's worth coming out of our comfort zones to try something new. And it sounds like you've epitomized that in many respects. So when are we talking about? When was that interview? How long ago?
December 2013.
Right. Yeah. So we're talking, you know, a decade ago, at least a decade ago. It's been quite a journey since then. Did you come into LabLogic as marketing manager? So that's been the journey for the last decade. Big transition this year. So in between all of that, of course, we had COVID, the pandemic.
COVID was weird because it allowed me the time. I had a marketing team that was pretty much doing the tactical elements. And I could kind of focus on this software and understanding it, but I couldn't go in the industry. So I used COVID, it wasn't a plan necessarily, but I used it to get up to speed with the software and start a bit of a sales journey. Which opened up like so many opportunities now in terms of managing different departments, dealing with different people. Be used to working with sales and marketing, working with software development, QA, all these different people and departments was really eye-opening. But for a company like LabLogic, to answer your question, yeah, you know, you'd think that COVID was an opportunity to maybe sell, but it's not really our bag. But we actually had our most successful years at that point back then. And it was interesting. Like, I think the way that we operate and how we do things in terms of relationships with customers and going out and visiting people, we couldn't visit people as much. But the relationships would be able to maintain because we didn't just have a business relationship, a lot of our customers. We had good, strong connections. And then, you know, before COVID, it felt weird being on a video call. After COVID, everybody was used to it. And there was a really big kind of, opportunity to connect with people all around the world on a better level from in the office. And yeah, like I said, we hired our first member of HR member, staff. And then, you know, we started to operate a little bit better globally because we could have those video calls, I would say. But at the same time, you then had a lot of staff who were more introverted and really enjoyed being at home, didn't really want to come back to the office. And it was an interesting transition. And at that point, what we decided to do was invest in a new office. I think we'd had the same office for, I don't know how many years, 10, 20 years, something like that. And yeah, we wanted to invest in a new office. And it was about kind of getting an office that matches who we are.
And that's where you are now.
And that's where we are now.
Really, really good. That's quite a journey. And LabLogic's grown through all of that. £30 million business now, global. You've come through this big journey, marketing manager, this year particularly, big transition to move into becoming operations director and all the management that comes with that. I suppose a lot of that is about quality of communication, how to communicate with people, how to get the best out of them, extolling the values, the mission, the vision, the culture of LabLogic is probably what you now start to see as part of your responsibility. Must be so many different pressures and opportunities for distraction. So I want to come on to the vision, which hopefully then, whatever the North Star looks like. But in that journey, of course, you've had to continue working with your father, Richard, who's the MD. I'm sure there's been challenges in amongst that, but also advantages in terms of good communication, challenges as well. So out of the pandemic into this transition, what has that felt like for you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the business just keeps going from strength to strength, which is exciting in many ways. And when you look back at the end of the year, it's great. Typically, there's ups and downs in everything, but it feels like we're going from strength to strength. But again, it's challenging because not letting go or moving on from marketing. The sales job that I did, I then became like, leading the software development team and doing lots of things that I just acquired more and more things. And then it's how do I pass them off and coach and encourage other people to take leadership, or how do we deal with the jobs that I was doing and passing those over? And then this job of operations director, I mean, I felt like I've been doing it for a while. I'm kind of really focused on how do we operate? How can we operate better? I mean, back to when we got HR in, that was kind of the thing that I was trying to do. But obviously, my dad, Richard, had been on a journey of a really small company to being, small, medium-sized company and operating in a certain way. And now I feel like the next 10, 20 years is us going, I think it's just going to happen because of the demand of the market. We're going to grow. We're going to get bigger. It's how do we operate at that point? So yeah, it's exciting, challenging, tiring. But yeah, it's something that I'm kind of looking forward to.
It's very much a good to great journey. Jim Collins' book is probably a good example of that. And it is about certain things you have to let go of, stop doing. What are we going to stop doing? What are we going to start doing? What are we going to keep doing? And that assessment is going on at the moment, which probably feels quite uncomfortable. And I can imagine some robust conversations and the willingness or unwillingness to let go of ways and systems that were for that particular size but aren't fit for purpose for the direction of travel. All of that suggests the need for some sort of orientation towards what the future looks like. Can you give us some sense of what growth might look like that you can then work backwards from to where we are now?
Yeah, I mean, Tim, you spoke to me a lot about, just thinking about in 5 years' time, and you talked about letting go of ways, or there's a lot of kind of sayings that we say that served us well over the years. And I know Richard would say, I don't care about a 3-5 year plan. And now what we're doing is kind of looking at the future and where are we going to go? And like you said, working back from it. So like just financially, if we do continue our trend, we might be from anything from 60 to 80 million by 2030. And if you look at how many people then we might need and work back from that, we then need to consider organizational structure. We can't work with Richard managing so many people or myself managing so many people. It needs to be a different structure. So I think there's a lot about being able to coach other people, bring people up, develop that structure. So yeah, it's about improving how we operate, bringing our data and having clearer, better KPIs potentially. But yeah, the future, I think it looks very promising from a not financial point, like an opportunity point of view, but from an operational point of view, there's some quite big challenges in there. And it's like you said, letting go of what's maybe served us so well up until now and changing. And, I know we talked about like being too corporate is what we've said, because we want to have those family values. We want to feel, like it's not a corporate entity. But actually, as we get bigger, we probably need to. What does being too corporate mean, right? We need to put more structure in place. We need to communicate, have better training, and that.
My observation is that when you're on a journey through time, it's so easy to fall into the trap of saying either corporate or family values, instead of what does it look like to be corporate and family values. So even changing the word or either or to and holding the tension between what seems to be two opposing forces. And what you realize is the change of language, and with language comes culture. So being willing to change the language of how you describe things is probably part of the journey of management. Of course, in your role, you're going to have to get to grips with goals, with KPIs, with performance targets. That's what management's about. But leadership, in terms of where the North Star is, where everybody's aligned towards, that's a big deal, isn't it, for a big company like you?
Yeah, I mean, when we're a smaller company, we're all in the same office, it was kind of easier, I guess, to lead people to, without having it clearly defined. There was a clear kind of drive, and people spoke a lot around getting a coffee and that type of stuff. As we get bigger, as we got offices around the world, we need to lead and clearly communicate where we're going and what we're doing and why we're doing multiple times. So not having these things defined and written out as such is, we do need to get to that, but that feels uncomfortable because that's not what we've done before.
Sure. Really, really interesting. And for anybody listening, hopefully encouragement that, it isn't comfortable, but you need to go on that journey. We've been working together for probably 6-9 months or so. So in the lead up towards that, I know there were conversations going on, and Richard had some previous coaching stroke training experience. But what was the context then, and what led you to sort of reach out? Because you did reach out and we started that relationship. What was going on at that point?
Yeah, I think there was a bit of tension, right? Like father-son, I can imagine it's not easy for hearing your son saying, "You're doing it, we should be doing it differently." And when you've had so much experience and so much business experience doing it this way. So there was a lot of kind of disagreements. And like I said, we're both passionate. We probably share a lot of the same traits. Apple doesn't fall from the tree, that type of stuff. So we could clash and disagree quite a lot. And it was just trying to have somebody else in that conversation to help. We're both passionate about the business. We both want to do well. And sometimes it's just, getting somebody to sit in the middle a little bit. And, Richard, like you said, I think he'd done some stuff with, some university stuff, and he'd done some coaching. And he said it was the most important thing that he's ever done for his development, and that I should try to do that. We'd done like a management course, and we got a lot out of that as a company. All the managers went on it, and then we came back to the coaching element, and Richard said we should get somebody in, and I think he'd worked with Action Coach, so we called you, and we had a good conversation. And when I first started, Tim, like a lot of the stuff that you said kind of hit home. Some of the stuff you said, I'll be honest, like I was like, it sounds too technical for me to really understand. But the more and the repetition of the message, and then thinking about that in the situation, has really helped me communicate better with Richard. And you discussing it with us as a team has allowed us to get clarity maybe where there wasn't before. So I think it's been so far so good.
Which is a sign of strength, because to recognize that is the starting point, coming out of what we call unconscious incompetence. There's an issue, there's some tension. What do we do about this? And I suppose you're right. It's a bit like an honest broker coming in, not taking any sides, but just observing and listening to language, because a lot of it comes back to language and communication style. And, you've realized the importance of the relationship that you have, the operations director, the managing director, that quality of relationship, that alignment filters down one way or the other through the whole business. So the responsibility to get it right must feel quite high in that respect.
Yeah, I remember you talking like quite early on about vision. Actually, when I talked about going on the management course, that was like 2018, and I went to Richard again saying like, look, I want some formal training. Everybody here has been a manager just by competence in their role and being, promoted into a manager. I'd been a manager at other places by title, but not really manage people. And I wanted to know more about it. So we found like an apprenticeship, and actually Richard said, look, it'd be really good if we could all go, if all the managers could go, and except myself and a few of the directors who would maybe have a very strong opinion, let's get the managers on it and go away. And it was funny when we came back from that, the first thing we tried to do was work on the vision, mission, values. And for Richard, he's just like, this is corporate BS. I wanted them to go on a course to learn how to be a better people manager, and they're coming back with this stuff. And now he's done a full 360 specifically on values. That is like one of the most important things that he talks about now. And then when we spoke, you was talking about vision, and to be honest, like a 3-5 year plan, I just took what we said before, like, yeah, it's really hard to predict. What's the point in that? And I remember having a bit of a conversation at first with you, like, I want to know how to structure the objectives of this year. I don't care about 3-5 years time, is really what I was thinking. But the more we've talked about it and the more we've gone through it and kind of gone through the journey of just like, let's have a look at the data, let's try to get the data. It again has added a little bit of clarity, and it's still a process. We still maybe fall back to some of the old ways of thinking, but the more of that we do, I mean, it is going to help us. And like you said, the alignment of the senior management team, the chairman, Richard, myself, the other directors, the leaders of the French is so important. And again, we can look at other people and say, oh, well, they're not doing that right, or they're not doing that. But we've got to look at ourselves and what are we communicating?
My observation when I came in was that, and my encouragement is that just a few little simple changes in the way you communicate, just some techniques, avoiding the use of the word but, which is a defensive response, giving space to listen, just slowing things down sometimes in amongst the pressure, responding to a question with another question, just a few little tricks and tips can make a big difference, actually. So this doesn't have to be a radical overhaul of a relationship. It's just, should we at least acknowledge that we got a bit of tension? How do we communicate more effectively? And I've seen some really great improvements in that respect. So you've both been willing to engage in that.
Yeah. I mean, still learning that. It's just so natural to just, and especially with somebody who knows you so well as your parent. I know when he's not feeling what I'm saying and the other way. So we don't even need to say anything. Sometimes it's just the body language, and it's being aware of that. And sometimes, let's be honest, it's necessary to have a bit of a disagreement. And I think that's one of the strengths of the relationship that maybe other employees wouldn't have, that I can go and say really how I feel about maybe how Richard approached the situation or how I feel things are going. And other people probably don't have that sense of security. So yeah, the alignment to the vision and how we communicate and how I communicate, not just with him, but with other people. It's certainly a journey that we're on and will continue to be on.
Through the coaching relationship we've developed, and you with that coaching background, but particularly in the last year in this transition, you say it's tiring at times, but what are you learning about yourself? How are you changing? And how is that being reflected in how you see the business changing?
Yeah, I think, I've learned a lot about myself in that period. Sometimes doing like these disc analysis and
which is a personality profile tool.
Yeah, doing those types of things makes you realize maybe why you think a certain way sometimes, or why you tend to have these types of problems. And sometimes, like, when I was younger, I'd probably become more frustrated that people didn't see it the way I did. And whereas now it's about how you communicate that message for the individual. And that's something that I'm still learning, by the way. And I think, it's interesting to the kind of psychology of managing and leading people it's not necessarily about knowing exactly what you need to know. It's about how you bring people along with you. And like I listen to a lot of podcasts on sport, and I really enjoy hearing how managers get the best out of people. And I think that is, it's an interesting
And that
journey.
personal development journey, when you start using words like self-awareness, about being fluent in human and being able to communicate. Because if communication is the response you get, frustration often occurs where you communicate in the way that you think they want to be communicated to, but it isn't often the way they want to be communicated to. So sitting in their shoes, sitting in their head, empathy, let's call it, is a skill that has to be learned really as a leader. Otherwise, with the best of intentions, you can get the opposite reaction, which then leads to breakdown and them and us culture and all of that. So it's an ongoing journey, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest learning curves I've had recently is, like I said, I've been kind of in a position leading or managing a lot of the software developers, which, typically higher Cs, and we use the disc profile method and away day just to kind of take it away from being a personal thing and just kind of say, like, look, this is like a natural thing where people see things differently. And that's really helped us. And then when it comes to appraisals and stuff, you can kind of, again, deflect in a certain way to kind of say, look, these are some of the trends. Do you see how that might be a case of miscommunication, and how maybe if you can take some ownership of your side of communicating that differently, and myself or other people can try to adapt to your style, that we're going to improve.
Yeah. And a business is a company, and a company is people, and people communicate. So communication and culture, which is values lived out as behaviors, is critical to the success of the business. And it sounds like you're on that journey. Really exciting. At the same time, you've been building your own home or developing your own home, so you've got a lot going on. Hopefully you get some downtime occasionally as well. What do you enjoy doing outside of LabLogic?
Yeah, I feel like purpose is important to me. And like I said, you said over the last year or so, I've been renovating a house, and I sometimes find it hard just to relax. Again, I like to be around people. I like to be discussing stuff. Or if I'm not doing that, I like to be doing stuff. So yeah, the house has kind of taken over my my last year. But yeah, like I said, I just like sport. I like communicating with different people and having. I'm a bit of a social butterfly. I've got lots of different friendship groups. But yeah, that's.
And sometimes you have to work hard to rest, don't you? You have to intentionally set aside time, plan for it, and then actively avoid all the distractions to rest.
Yeah, and I think, again, that's something that at LabLogic, certainly part of the senior leadership group need to learn, right? We all need to learn how to switch off, because I've just come back off holiday today, my first day back. And I'm well aware that the world carries on when I'm on holiday. And if I'm laid at the side of the pool and I'm aware that some things are going off, it's really hard to think, I know that that's happening tomorrow. I need to check in with that. But that is then about finding ways to coach and allow other people to take responsibility. And that's, like I said, I think that's what we need to get better at. As a small company, you have people that have been there for so long that know so much. And it's so easy for them to answer all the questions, but that kind of limits other people as well.
You're talking about the art of delegation, and it is an art form. Fascinating to listen to you, Adam. A lot of life lived in how many years, if you don't mind me asking?
36.
36. If you were looking back to the 18-year-old version of yourself today, what advice would you be giving yourself now?
Yeah, probably enjoy it a bit more. Like when I went to university, like I said, I was constantly coming back home, working, and then I don't know if I had the real experience that maybe others had at uni, because I was constantly traveling about a little bit. And then when I was at work, I was constantly thinking of the next thing. At LabLogic now, I'm really focused on what can we do better rather than celebrating some of the wins sometimes. And I think, you've got to enjoy it on the journey, and that's a battle that I have now. It's still the same advice I'll give myself now, but it is about just enjoying it a little bit more. And that's probably my advice.
I really appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability. That's a superpower. And when you first came in and we came into the studio and you said, I haven't dressed for this. And I'm thinking, you dress perfectly because you look like a coach. And I would imagine young people, particularly listening to you, would perhaps want to reach out to you and say, I love that story, how do I get going? So if somebody wants to get hold of you or find out more about LabLogic, how can they do that?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Adam Anthony Brown on LinkedIn, just drop me a message and I'm happy to share and learn from others. Like I said, it's, you said I've done a lot in 36 years. Sometimes look at myself, I'm like, I should be here, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. And I'm willing to, I like to listen to people. I think that's what's helped me with the coaching so far, is that it doesn't feel like an educational journey. It feels more like just speaking some of experience and learning.
Self-discovery, unlocking potential. And you're a great example of that. Adam, it's been really good to talk to you. Thank you for your time. And look forward to the next 36 years.
God, I don't know if I'll survive that time, to be honest. But yeah, thank you.
Great to see you.